something I do, I talk aloud while studying a lot. So I try to explain myself the concept. Something is difficult, I ask myself questions, I ponder, I try to make connections. All this is coming out, especially when I'm doing foreign languages. How many people are currently taking a foreign language course? You know, speaking is extremely important. I mean, you can read and write essays, but you know, you travel to a country, you're not going to write an essay for someone. Speaking is really going to be the key to mastering any language. So that's why you have to always speak, speak, speak. And I know initially it's the fear that envelops us. You know, we're really afraid of making mistakes, especially if we're in a class with native speakers. You know, we're going to look ridiculous. But you know, you have to overcome that initial fear, okay? Because by overcoming that fear, that's the only way you're going to grow. All right, so don't be afraid to speak in class, and when you're doing your homework, talk it out loud. Say the phrases, yeah, and then listen and hear your pronunciation. Ask yourself whether it matches that of native speakers. Okay, you have to really be rigorous with yourself. See, this is what I mean by intensity, drive. See, everybody can do his or her homework. Everyone, you know, goes to school 6 hours a day. Everyone does 2 hours of homework, 2 or maybe even 4 hours of homework. But what differentiates, you know, the top students from the mediocre students is while they're doing their homework, they're putting this much energy into it. They're not just kind of, okay, yes, I just plug in this formula. This tense, okay, I take out the ER and I see, that's very passive, but they think, okay, they try to formulate the ideas in their head beforehand, they say it out loud, they understand why they're using mathematical concepts. See, it's a more involved state, and that's what's going to make the difference for you. All right. Another thing is like interacting with notes, the same thing as talking out loud. When you're reviewing your notes every time, write down comments in the margin. Write down or highlight key terms and research them later. Okay, draw diagrams. And one of the most powerful techniques that many texts don't talk about is called recall. Because many people can recognize information, but let's say you have an essay assignment in which you have to write down all the facts from memory. That's when it sometimes gets difficult. It's difficult to produce all that information from scratch, from your mind. So what you can do maybe 2 days before an examination, let's say in biology, what you do is you just take a blank sheet of paper and you write down everything you know about the topic. And then you compare with your notes and see what you missed. And you write that in a different color. So whatever's in a different color, you know that's something that I tend to forget. And then you can look at that in more detail. That's a very good exercise because you're practicing recalling the information, and you'll be able to produce that upon the exam time. Okay? Another thing you do is be the teacher. All right? This is one of the best exercises.
Okay.
You know, to your family members or to friends. You know, if you're doing group study, you try to be the teacher, because if you can explain something to somebody, if you can be clear about it, that means you understand it very well. If you can't explain it well to somebody, that shows that you need more work. So this can be a great way for you to determine what material you need to review in more depth. All right? And another thing is, a lot of time when people are studying, they just keep going over the material they already know, because that makes them feel better. I mean, everything I'm telling you is something I did. But sometimes what we have to do is tackle the difficult concepts. And you know, there's this mental resistance initially. You know, we just don't want to handle it because it makes us feel inferior, it makes us feel weak and impotent. But you have to get over that hurdle, you know, and over that fear of a particular subject. You know, typically if there's a subject we don't like, we put it off, right? But that's something we have to do first. Save what you like for later, for 11 o'clock at night, where you can still do it though your mental focus is not as acute.
A note on that too, and what I teach my students all the time, is when they have something that they can't figure out, tackle it all the way. Don't just try and get stuck and you know, hit that dead end. Mm-hmm. Take it the next day to your teacher, ask them, make sure you understand it perfectly clear. Because if you're missing one step in math, you can't go on to the another. You need every single step to be able to hit the big calculus problems. So make sure you understand every single thing the teacher is trying to tell you. Take it to them the next day. That's what they're paid to do, to help you learn. So don't have a fear of asking teachers difficult questions.
I've also encountered many high school students will tell me the teacher isn't available. The teacher doesn't teach me. The teacher is not answering my questions. That's one teacher. There's many teachers at your high school, and all of them are more than happy to help you. even though you're not their student. If your teacher cannot give you the right answers, feel free to find another math teacher, another science teacher, another English teacher that teaches a similar or the same subject, and ask them. A lot of times they'll give you either a different angle on it that will enrich what you already know, or they'll be able to answer your question more thoroughly than what your teacher was able to give you.
Wonderful. All right, and yeah, that's probably the most important. And if you have a difficult problem, sometimes break it up. Many times these science processes, if you're studying a difficult concept like equilibrium or kinetics, they seem to be so many formulae and so many steps involved, but always break it down. Maybe make a flowchart. That goes back to draw diagrams and pictures. You know, you have to know what format suits you. Many people are visual learners. They like to see pictures. So maybe draw a diagram, okay, explaining the steps and why you do each steps. You know, just play around with this. I think another thing that differentiates, the elite students from us mediocre people are the tenacity. I really felt that when I was working with, some lab partners over in Princeton, like there would be some minute point about one question, and I would say, oh, just forget it. It's not a big deal. But no, I had to find out. They were just. It's like they didn't care about time. They just had to get every single answer. They had to understand every minute point, even more so than I. So that really was enlightening for me. I felt that, okay, this is the standard. This is what is expected of me. Stop at nothing to really understand thoroughly the material.
Get used to being a perfectionist, because that's what you're going to have to be.
Yeah.
Passion for learning.
Yeah.
And see, we always think of homework and then study, but ideally, if you do your homework thoroughly, and if you really put as much mental energy as required, your homework would just be your study. If the test is coming up, okay, I'm ready, because I've done all my homework, I understand the topics. We have this fear of tests, but if we just do our homework consistently and thoroughly, I believe that, tests would just take care of themselves, because, if you understand the material, what can the teacher ask you? So treat homework well, really, really kind of do it to the best of your ability and leave no stone unturned.
Even if it's not graded. A lot of my students have ungraded homework. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's not graded. No, it does matter. It's part of setting the foundations for later more complicated, even more complex than what you guys are studying now. Abilities, or no. Okay, never mind.
When you remember it, don't worry about it. Like, my mother used to tell me that for every hour that you study, you'll have 7 days of ease when you grow up, and I really didn't believe her, but it's looking more and more true as I go on with my studies. It really does. Because if you lay the foundations, imagine if I didn't master my multiplication tables. All higher math would be more difficult. So there would be hours and hours of torture if I didn't memorize the foundation. Similarly, what we're doing today in high school lays the foundation toward college and professional life. So it may not seem relevant now, and even if it's not relevant, it's not always just the material that's important. As I was telling some other people, it's the process of learning the material and being able to solve problems. Those skills that you're developing is what's most important, not just the material itself. So don't ever say, oh, I'm never going to need this in life. That's a very immature way of looking at schoolwork. It's the way you handle difficulties which makes you an intelligent person and a successful person. Next slide. Okay, so that's a little bit about school. Now we'll go on to standardized tests, my favorite part. All right, some general guidelines, especially for the advanced placement test. Try to formulate your own questions. If you're looking over some material, think about what can be asked regarding this. Okay, either open-ended questions or multiple choice questions. That's just one strategy. And as many techniques as you learn and as many classes you take, you're not going to be able to perform well under stress unless you practice a lot. And what I say about stressful conditions is, when you're in the examination room, there's a lot more tension than when you're sitting at your dining table. So what you do is you initially until you get comfortable, you practice under good conditions. But then, once you're nearing the test, you want to mimic that stressful feeling of an examination rule. So maybe you listen to some music, or you have the TV on or something like that, but still, within the allowed time. So you have to concentrate, you have to work through the distraction. So something like that will force your brain to be stronger and more resilient, something like that. Okay? Or you can bubble in all the answers with your left hand, or your right hand if you're left-handed, something like that. That creates stress, which makes you work harder, because then when you go into the actual examination room, it won't be as difficult. Just a short thing about SparkNotes.com actually not only has all the stuff that you read for your English final, but it also has a lot of nice examination material. You do have to pay a little bit, but I think they give you a good practice test, especially for the SAT subject test. So you might want to look into that for some.
One of the amazing things that I find as time progresses is that the internet keeps getting more and more collective deposit of information. You find more and more useful things on the internet. And this has changed very much over the last, since 1995. In 1995, the internet really wasn't around to help students. It was, maybe CompuServe or Encarta, but now you can simply type in chemistry equation practice sheet in a Google search, and you'll actually find PDF files, Word files. You'll find interactive flash demos on how to do all these different things. If you have a hard time with any subject, there's a lot of material out there. Teachers produce materials specifically to teach and help students, and they usually are very not shy about sharing it. A lot of it is out there. Look for it. It can be found.
And when you get to college, Google Scholar. Oh my God. I was just telling one of my kids about it right now. It has the most amazing research articles that are 15 to 30 pages written by, very experts in the field, and they can help you so much with writing research papers. And in high school right now, it could help you as well for any topics that you need good quality information. And there's a big difference between quality information and, random Wikipedia. So make sure you understand where your sources are coming from.
Definitely. Yeah, that Google Scholar, I wanted to mention it before, but that would really impress your teachers if you're doing some kind of research project, because these are credited, university work. They're not just somebody sitting on the weekend typing something on Wikipedia. It's very high quality information, as Diane said, but it's more difficult to read initially. But if you just get used to that standard of reading and writing, it will really help you once you get into college, because that's all we read in college. That's all that's expected of us. You have to read those technical, scientific journal entries, which
research
can be
essays nonstop.
Can be a little tedious sometimes.
So the earlier your exposure to that, the easier it's going to be in college.
All right. So the three main standardized tests that most people are going to be associating with are the SAT reasoning test, the SAT subject test, and the AP, the advanced placement test. So just a quick run through. The SAT reasoning test is comprised of 3 sections: critical reading, mathematics, and writing. Okay, the writing has a lot of grammar as well as a short essay, 25-minute essay. The subject tests, each one, by the way, the SAT reasoning test is about 3.5 hours, 4 hours with the breaks included in. It can be a little tedious. Definitely have to practice that. The SAT subject tests are for particular subjects. Mathematics, U.S. history, Spanish, chemistry, biology, physics, and they're just 1 hour, about 50 questions on average. And yeah, you can take multiple in each sitting. Don't worry about the specifics. And the advanced placement tests are allied with the advanced placement classes that are offered at the school. Okay, and those tests are administered in school itself. You don't have to go on a Saturday to Newark or Logan.
So why are those important tests?
All right, AP tests. My advice is do as many AP classes as possible. In fact, I know sometimes it can be difficult, but it's always that challenge that really spurs you onward and will really be beneficial to you. So if you ever have a question about whether or not to take AP classes or not, go ahead and take it, because if you do pretty well on an AP test, they're scored from 1 through 5. Typically, you have to get 4 or 5 to get college credit, but you can get college credit for the AP test. So typically, some colleges, what they do is they actually eliminate some classes,
Exactly, and it is so beneficial. You're already going to spend so much money going to school. If you know another language and you can ace an SAT class, that's a year of college that you can pay to take other classes that are more important than taking language classes in college. So I highly recommend, especially the language, if you can test out, it's very beneficial. And college credit, you can graduate in 3 years instead of 4, and that could be a lot of money going up. So.
Yeah, that's possible. But some departments for AP credit, they don't let you skip a class, but they do have more advanced version of the same class that they will offer you. So you'll have more opportunities, a higher crop of students, for example. So there are many more opportunities, more doors will open to you if you take more AP classes. And that being said, there American High School, because that's all I'm familiar with. Is anybody here not from American High School? From another part of it? Okay, just letting you know. We offer a good range of classes, but if there are some tests that are not offered by your school and you wish to take them, you can take them on your own. You can self-study, and that would be very impressive. That shows a lot of motivation and initiative. So maybe if you do computer science, or if you do geography, or if you do, Latin, or even there's an advanced physics, Physics C, which integrates physics and calculus. So any of these, if you want to do by yourselves and take the test, that's also available to you. They have to give you the test.
And you can get tutoring at Ace for those extra self-study courses. And another note on that, schools or colleges rank your school on what's offered. So, for example, my high school only offered 5 AP classes. Yours offered
maybe 12.
12. So colleges rank them based on the most difficult course load that high school offers. So when you're applying and you only take, you don't take honors classes and you don't take AP classes, colleges take that into account and they rank you lower depending on your opportunities. Colleges expect you to take every single opportunity your school offers and take the hardest amount of classes. Even if that means, your grades might be a little bit in the middle because it's super hard, right? But they take that into account, and you guys should take that into account as well. So.
Someone had a question?
Yes. Suppose you have class conflicts. Like me, I would like to take band for all 4 years, but that really puts me in the way of AP classes.
You have to make those compromises, but that's. Oh, please.
So there's one amendment to the AP thing, but you can, like Raul said, take an AP class or the AP test without taking the class. If you, for example, have band conflict directly with AP biology, take honors biology, take the AP test. For honors biology, you'll still get the extra point towards your UC application. You can take the test. If you have a counselor tell you that you cannot, that is incorrect. A lot of them will actually tell you that without taking the class, you can't take the test. And that is very much a fallacy. You can take any test you want. This is offered by a private firm. It's the ETS, right? They put out these tests. You can take them, pay the fee. You just take as close to the class as possible. That's your best thing. That's one of the ways to compromise your schedule. Another thing to note about AP classes is, yes, your colleges do get ranked by the most difficult schedule according to how many AP classes are offered. However, AP basket weaving, if it were just hypothetically, is still counted as one of those AP classes. So even though it's a AP class that is not in your field of interest, it would still be counted as one of the AP tests that you did not take. That's scary, isn't it? That's a very, very horrible thought. And this actually comes directly from the University of California, Berkeley admissions department. One of my friends actually is on a committee that reviews some of these applications, and they tell me the AP psychology that you decide not to take because it's psychology, and psychology to you is a pseudoscience. Well, that's still the AP class that you didn't take, and you should still try to challenge yourself. If you're not going to take that AP psychology class, maybe you should look into something that your high school does not offer. And like Raul said, self-study. That would show very much initiative. That would show you going above and beyond, and would also displace not wanting to take that AP psychology class.
It's a really good idea to self-study, because in college, it's all self-study. You don't understand something, it's up to you to figure it out. So if you display that type of learning early on in high school, college is going to be more apt to want to take you, especially if you score well on one that you self-studied for. So,
any questions about standardized tests, quickly? Okay. You can ask them later also. All right. Last part, the extracurricular activities now. We did touch upon this a little bit, but I want to go into more detail. First about athletics. How many people are involved in athletics generally? Okay, quite a good smattering. You know, even people who are not involved in athletics, it's very important, I believe, to have some kind of exercise, because really the saying that a healthy body is a healthy mind is incredibly true. You know, days you exercise, your mind really works a lot better. Okay, there is a connection there. So do, you know, keep your body fit, you'll be able to concentrate much more. All right. Again, everything that we applied to schoolwork, you know, if you're an athlete, you have to use the same principles. If you're intense on the playing field or intense on the court, you're also going to be intense with your schoolwork. So it always, you know, it comes down to how much energy you put in, you know, how much dedication you put in, how much drive you have. So, for example, resistance training is, you know, the principle that you should train under circumstances that are more difficult than you have to actually perform in. And I touched upon that. Even when you're working with the SAT, you know, when you're practicing, you want situations that are even more difficult than are going to be in the examination. So that principle is not only present in athletics, but it can also be present in school. So a lot of the principles that we use, you know, in extracurricular activities, that's why people encourage extracurricular activities, because you learn lessons that can be applied to every sphere of your life, okay? And also with sports, you also learn a lot of teamwork, mental focus. You really have to put in a lot of energy, you know. Don't go to a sport just, you know, to put it on your application, and don't just go there and just kind of walk around and just chat with your friends. Even your physical education, I mean, most people, like I've seen, and it seems like it hasn't changed, that, you know, most people just kind of dress, come out, they just kind of chill, they just jog. You really have to put energy in if you want benefits in everything, okay?
and a note about sports, I recommend freshman year of high school, or if you haven't figured it out by then, try all the sports you can. See which one you like. But whichever one you like, stick to it for the 4 years. It's only one season typically, and if you take that for 4 years, you might eventually letter, and you might eventually be on varsity, and maybe take it to the next level. Who knows? Competitions, competing within the state, all the opportunities are open. And another way that we're not discussing to get into college is through sports. If you're really good, colleges will want you, and they will pay for all your school, especially football. Stanford pays full rides, plus meals, plus everything, plus stipends to football players. So keep that in mind if, you know, you want that type of extra benefits.
2 notes. You might say, well, I'm a girl. Football really isn't my thing. And I agree with you. There are many female sports out there as well. And a lot of schools do look for excellent female athletes. One of my friends excelled in softball, girls softball pitching. She went to Brown on a full scholarship because she was a pitcher.
Recruiting is huge, so keep that in mind. Whatever you do it 100% of your ability. No, do it 120% of your ability.
And
don't even stop at 100.
You can also go above and beyond what your school offers. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's not always what's presented directly to you, but the opportunities you create for yourself. My sport was karate. I did it for 5 years, did tournaments, and that was the sport that I put on my application. No, I didn't get any varsity letters for it, but I had enough certificates and medals from it to make up for that.
Exactly. Good.
And don't ever feel that, oh my God, you know, I haven't done any sports and look at all these people. You know, it can sometimes be daunting when you go to university, or even if you look around your peers, people have done so much. But, you know, there have been instances people have begun, you know, even as late as 17 or 18 and still become very top level athletes. So, you know, if you use these principles and if you're really dedicated, you know, nothing is impossible, I believe. Just as a disclaimer, you know, don't push yourself to an ability that it's, I mean, to an extent that it could be unhealthy. Do, you know, exercise some.
And another reason why it's important, and we're even mentioning it, is because it goes along with the balance. You're balanced in your education and balanced in your physical activity, and that's what colleges look for, the all-around balance of what you've done in your life for the first 18 years. So.
Teamwork. That's such an interesting word. How many of you have done a group project at school? Do you enjoy working in a team? Do you sometimes find that the team is slightly uneven? You find that a lot, especially in high school, correct? It's important to learn to be a team player even when every member of the team isn't working along at the same level. Teamwork sometimes means learning to work with a team that isn't working with you at the moment. Teamwork is a very important part of not only high school, college, but also further in the workplace after college. It's something that you need to build throughout life. It will be one of the things that makes you successful in life. Not just high school, not just class, not just a project, but in life. Learning to get along with people, learning to get people who don't like each other, who have personal differences, to come together and work together towards a common goal. Learning to do that is a very large thing.
I mean, I just had an interview at a law firm, and they asked me, how do you work in a team? What are you supposed to say, right? You give them all your examples and everything, but they're asking that in interviews, so it's necessary that you can provide backup data for that one example. So, I mean, it's super important. Learn it now, it's a great skill. Also, it's just basic delegation. If you can work in a team and delegate and be effective, that's also a great skill that will help you later on in life.
And like a lot of military academies, West Point particularly, they require all their cadets to do a varsity sports because they see the connection between, you know, people playing sports and their ability to work in teams and their leadership ability. So you really develop a lot of skills by playing sports. So even if it's informal, you know, even once you join college, you know, there are intramural or club sports which are less than varsity level. They're just like within the college itself. Take that up. I mean, still do it with intensity, but you know, you won't be traveling and it won't be a burden on your time. But you can really develop skills through sports, and many people don't see that or appreciate that. All right, any questions? Okay, just a quick some other opportunities for extracurricular activities. What I did, I volunteered like Diane at a veterans hospital, you know, and some of the skills I learned, it was a big cultural shock because back in some Eastern culture, Asian cultures, you know, the concept of a nursing home is foreign, you know. We typically believe that children should take care of their parents. So it's very different from what I experienced. So it helped me get a glimpse of a new perspective. And speaking with the veterans, and most of them were World War II veterans, you know, just retiring. I mean, they had retired, but now they were, you know, in their 80s. So gaining some of the wisdom in their experiences and what they learned was a very good experience for me. I learned quite a lot. And many of them had physical and mental ailments. You know, they had dementia, Alzheimer's, they had personality disorders, they had strokes. That really kind of made me more tolerant and made me more open, because typically when we see somebody like that on the streets, we shy away from them, we cringe a bit. So it helped me, you know, see them more as individuals, which is difficult. So altogether, that was a good experience for me. I volunteered 2 summers in the Veterans Hospital. I also I also taught geography at Thornton Junior High School. I also, again, going back to the first slide, I believe teaching is the best way to learn. Even if you don't have anybody to teach, just talk to yourself, you know. Get it out. See what you do remember. See what you do recall. See what you do understand well. And then root out your problems and work on them in more detail.
I also did hospital volunteering as a high school teen. My parents very much pushed for me to be a doctor. I said to my parents, that sounds great, Mom and Dad, but let me try it out a little bit first. And I found a hospital to volunteer at, and I quickly learned that was not something that I would want to do.
Exactly.
And like I said earlier, experience, go out there, figure out what's right for you, what isn't right, and give feel for what's out there. Create your own opportunities and get an idea of what you want to specialize in, what you want to do. And sometimes finding out what you want to do is finding out what you don't want to do.
Just some other skills I kind of put together as an ending note. The first thing, if you can read it, it says positive attitude. Again, going back to what I said earlier, you know, it's kind of fashionable among high schools, as I've noticed, you know, to criticize teachers, say how bad they are at teaching, say how much the homework sucks. You know, it just, you don't even notice that you're doing it. It just happens so often. And I think that's a very counterproductive attitude, you know. Sometimes, you know, you have to be brave and kind of stick up for, you know, maybe a teacher. You have to say, you know, yeah, maybe that teacher may not teach us well, but look, maybe the teacher is discouraged by the fact that students aren't putting so much work. You know, it's difficult. Maybe the teacher has other problems. You know, trying to be the first to understand and be more tolerant and be more open. Really, you know, create an attitude that would be conducive to further growth. Okay, and also toward homework, you know, don't just say, you know, I have to get it done. And as Dan said earlier, you know, just because something isn't graded doesn't mean it's not important. Okay, you know, I hate it when people say, oh, this part is only worth 10% of our grade. I'm not going to care. Oh, labs don't really count in this course. You know, who cares? Just get it done. But you know, lab skills are incredibly. That's where science is done. Once you get into college, you know, you have to conduct research. That's going to differentiate you. You can't just be reading stuff. You know, everything that you read is found out through experiments conducted in the laboratory. So by having good laboratory skills, you're going to be, you know, a superior scientist if you choose that direction, choose that vocation. So, see, it all starts with our attitude when we're young. You know, if we have bad attitudes, I believe down the road it's going to cause more problems. So, also, fearlessness, as I touched upon earlier, we're all afraid to make mistakes. We're all afraid to speak up in class. You know, when the teacher asks for the answers, nobody wants to volunteer because we're all afraid we're wrong and being embarrassed in front of our peers. It's okay, because if you're embarrassed, think about it. If you make a mistake in front of the class, I'm sure that you will never make that mistake again. So it's like you learn something that you're never going to forget. So you have to be able to take that blow to your ego, and because that's going to really, you know, ensure that you grow. Okay, but if you have fear and if you're always worried about how other people perceive you, that's really going to stop you from making mistakes and learning from them. All right. Also, willingness to help, work in groups. Like, again, you know, connect with your peers. The more you teach them, the more you understand the material. You know, even if you don't quite understand it, say, okay, I'm going to work with you. Let's try to figure this out together. See, this is what I understand, but I don't quite get this, and maybe he can contribute. Maybe, you know, she can give you some insight. So really, kind of learning is a lot more collaborative than I thought. You know, always when we see scientists in movies, they're always sitting isolated in some room, and you know, they're reading to it themselves, smoking a pipe. But that's not the modern scientist. The modern scientist is a much more collaborative person who embraces teamwork. Yeah, there is an element of individualism as well, but you know, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to bounce ideas. You have to be able to communicate what you're thinking. You have to be able to ask questions. That's also very important to gathering knowledge. Also, time management. This quote practically sums up everything. Just do everything as soon as you can, and that's the best way to manage your time, trust me. If you put things off, it just I don't know how it happens, but it just always, creates a jam. So just do things as quickly as you can with high quality, and that should take care of it, okay? And tackle difficult things first. That's also gonna, you do that and just miraculously you have so much time, trust me.
Oddly enough, that goes across all different facets of your life. You realize that the pile of unfolded socks soon turns into a mountain of unfolded socks that you have to take the hour off to fold.
I really found that helps for me. And the last thing, have a sense of humor. I mean, yeah, we're working really hard here in all aspects of our life, but I heard that a sense of humor is actually an evolution. Animals don't have senses of humor, neither do computers. It's a uniquely human quality, and the reason we have that is it helps us cope with stress. So, having a sense of humor, even through difficult situations, it can help you kind of maintain perspective and just kind of help you get through without being scarred too much. Okay. Just kind of laugh at yourself, laugh at how hard you're working, and then just continue onward. Any last questions about anything?
Some questions regarding that volunteer thing. I heard that because I approached somebody and they said there is a certain age that you have to be in to get into the volunteering.
So,
What is that age?
I think for Washington, did you ask Washington?
No, any.
I'm sorry,
Kaiser. I
the
went
what?
to Kaiser.
the volunteering.
The volunteering. In the
It
hospital.
varies. It's usually 16.
16. So you have to complete 16, right?
Yes, you have to be usually of a working age, but that is not always the case.
Okay.
Always keep an eye open. Just because one person has that policy doesn't mean that every person has that policy.
And and the second question is like your experience regarding that. What happened to you? You applied for that 4 months back, 5 months back, and how was the response from that particular hospital? That's
The Veterans Hospital was pretty good. That's in Palo Alto in Menlo Park. They have 2 branches. They've been pretty responsive. They don't seem to have as much demand as maybe Kaiser or Washington.
Would they have the age limit like 16?
I don't believe.
Most
no,
hospitals do have that because they are more regulated by the state, and so they have to answer more to the labor laws and follow those very strictly. So the 16 applies especially for larger institutions. If we're talking about volunteering at a law firm, they take a 14-year-old filing clerk.
Yeah, there are other opportunities other than hospitals. I know we all 3 did hospitals, but I also did soup kitchens, I also did Habitat for Humanity. I would have done everything if I could have, but...
basically just getting an idea here. So, and
I believe I did one it started when I was 15, so I think the Veterans Hospital might be 15.
yeah, so
What
the
kind-
last question, I'm sorry.
So go ahead, I'm sorry.
The last question I have is this you do it while you are in this high school or you do it in this 2 months time?
Summer. Just the summer, right?
Either.
I did it all year,
Yeah,
5 years.
exactly. You said basically you started at the 8th grade, right?
Mhm.
At that point of time, are you allowed to do the lab activities or something like that? Or
Lab
just admin works? What kind basically?
No, I worked in a lab. I mean, there's so many things you can do in a hospital. I filled prefer bottles for 5 hours, or I would, separate records, or, just delivered flowers to people, patients in the room. I mean, there's all sorts of, they keep it really, easy enough for 14-year-olds to do without liability to the hospital, but there's still things you can do to brighten people's day and,
At this age, it's important to not start off somewhere in particular, but to get your foot in the door.
Okay.
To start somewhere. If you're very interested in volunteering in a hospital, you should be willing to mop the floors to start off with.
oh yeah, definitely.
You'll build them. They see that you're responsible and useful, they'll use you more. They'll trust you more. They'll put you somewhere more useful, more interesting. But the key at your first job, at your first volunteering job, get your foot in the door. If it's something that you're really interested in, be willing to mop the floor.
And also, don't think that volunteering ends in high school. I volunteered at Stanford Hospital 3 years while I was there. So you can continue to do your services and activities past the, college application. So keep that in mind, and just, basically most of what we've been saying is, how to live your life and succeed. So keep that in mind, is all this advice we're telling you, and I'm sure, your parents are probably telling you the same things, is just basic life lessons to succeed, and those are the keys to getting into the college. So do you guys have any questions for me, specifically parents or kids or anything?
I had a question for Rahul. How will you know which courses are good in certain universities? Like they say, oh, Berkeley is good for business administration, like that. How will we know? How will we do the homework for finding out which courses?
The U.S. News and World Report every year they put out list of the college rankings, but they also break it up based on more specifics. I know they do it for graduate schools like medical school, business school, law school, but I'm not sure for more specifics.
The graduate programs are almost a thermometer for the undergraduate programs, because good undergraduate or good graduate students teach good undergraduate students. And so even if it doesn't have a specific ranking of the undergraduate, the graduate programs are give you an idea of how hot or how cold the program is in general.
Any volunteering work done in the junior high school, is it counted as?
Any volunteering you do, period, if you started when you were
Not
grade.
necessarily after the, in the high school.
I mean, I'm sure it will stay on the application, whether or not it's restricted to the 5 or 6 years, but I put all my cumulative hours, and sometimes they ask you for letters from that institution to verify, and they will put every single hour you've ever worked. So.
Also, keep in mind that if you volunteer in junior high, that's when you first got your foot in the door. That's when you first started showing responsibility and ability to work with others in a workplace. So I started working with autistic children in 7th grade, and that was my foot in the door. Was it glamorous? Was it amazing? In certain respects, yes. In other respects, it got my foot in the door. It was a start. And that's what allowed me to go into the local hospital and volunteer there later on, was the fact that I had already started somewhere else.
Yeah, if we're going for a career in financing, which aspects of the school life should we focus on?
High school life?
Yeah.
Just make sure you have basic foundations for everything. Because when you get to college is when you're going to start specializing. And I recommend going to a school that has some type of business program if you're interested in that. For example, Stanford does not have an undergraduate major for business. So it's a little bit more difficult to, come out there and, depending on what you want to do, be an accountant, for example. It's going to be more difficult from Stanford. But if you want to be an iBanker, you take economics, right? So it just depends. Really. High school, really just focus on the basics. Focus on just absorbing as much information as you can. And the first 2 years of college are also the same thing, just at a higher level. And then the last 2 years of college is when you start specializing, deciding your major, figuring out what you want to do with the rest of your life.
As you actually apply for colleges, you might want to also look into special programs that are offered by different colleges. Different colleges have, although they might not offer specifically the investment major that you're looking for, they might offer a program that leads into something like that prepares you for it, or that it leads directly into a master's program on that. So keep in mind that you might not be applying specifically for the major, but you might want to keep in mind that you have the potential at one school to go into a program that goes further into that.
I also, because Stanford's a little bit different, but my little sister went to USC, and you have to apply to get into that school to the major you want to get into. And those majors require different skill sets from the high school level. So whatever colleges you want to apply to, make sure you fully understand what the application process is. So if they require that you, graduate high school with calculus, then you need calculus to get into those programs. So that's something you would have to figure out on your own, basics, but also know at like senior year, I need to have done all of these classes to be able to even apply to this special program. So that's why the earlier you know these things, the better off you're going to be when the time comes, because it happens so quick, applications, and you're already so bogged down that it's really essential that you understand what each college is looking for and what they require. And also a general note about applications, don't feel limited by the essay. The essay, you can put anything you want. You can put your whole life story. And I also recommend, I know when I was applying 5 years ago, it was a little bit different. You know, the affirmative action lawsuits and everything that were going on really had a pull to pull in minorities to colleges. So if you have, you know, if you do things within your culture that other people don't do, if you're active in, you know, the community life or, you know, some type of religion or whatever, put that on your resume. Talk about those experiences. Talk about how you are a unique individual, helping your community thrive in the USA or whatever you need to do. Or if you have setbacks, if your parents didn't graduate from high school, or if they didn't graduate from elementary school like my parents, you can still put that on your resume. They look at that because you're first generation college student. It's a very important thing to put on your resume. So don't leave anything out. Put your whole, like, basically, when you're done with the college application, they know your entire life story. So don't feel like you're limited in that regard. Put everything you need to do to make sure that they can see you and your whole life from 6 or 7 pieces of paper. Okay?
There was something in geography B, and you can say about the geography B. What is that?
Yeah, so that was just an example of the volunteer activity I had done. In Thornton Junior High School, I was teaching geography weekly in preparation for the geography B, because so that, you know, they could conduct. And the geography, National Geographic has school-wide Bs. They have questions, and the school winner has a written test, which.
So where do you get the information? How can you conduct? Like, suppose he wants to go back as a junior high and conduct a geography B.
I'm sure you can go through the school. The school has to pay. It's a nominal fee, like $40, which is easy to procure, and they send you all the materials, and then you can do it any way you want as long as you conduct the B.
This also goes back to creating your own opportunities. If you have an interest in something or a specific school, you can go to the school and say, I'm interested in doing some sort of hosting or helping out with some sort of school after-school activity for your students. What do you have? How can I help? How can I be part of something?
Also, we're talking about a lot of leadership outside the school, but don't forget the opportunities inside your school. Join the ASB, well, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Here? Okay. Be a leader in your own school. Even as dull as it sounds, organize school dances, organize functions within your school so you can, you know, show yourself as standing out among your peers in that high school. Because that's what their colleges are looking for.
Yes.
I also do American high school. I have a question for you. What classes do you take in junior year?
So.
I'm just curious.
We can talk about this later. Don't
okay.
worry about it. But again, like, because I don't want to say like this is the prescribed list of classes that would be optimum. I would say, you know, challenge yourself definitely, and take a nice broad array of classes, especially in the math and sciences. I think that really differentiates people.
I get a lot of students that ask me that question. What should I take in this year? When I get that question, I ask them what they took what's the last set of classes that they took, and where we can build upon that. Because it's different for each and every person. There may be some similarities between different people, but every person, they're in a different class, they have different strengths, different weaknesses, different likes, different dislikes, and you have to figure out what you're going to do, what you want to study, how to encourage yourself to have a lifelong love of learning.
And another point, I mean, we're telling you guys to, you know, do everything, challenge yourself the hardest, but if you can't do those type of classes, if you can't handle AP, for example, my science was terrible. I was in honor science, I was about to fail it, so I had to drop back. Don't feel bad when you do that, because when you do, you're gonna get an A+, right? You're gonna, whatever you take, just make sure you do well in it. If there's something that you just cannot handle and you're gonna fail and ruin your GPA, which is very important, 50%, just take the lower class, and parents be, you know, nice when your kids have to say, hey, Mommy, Dad, I just can't handle this. So, yeah.
About electives in junior high,
Okay.
like I believe the most popular ones, or at least the ones that I've heard most students take, is like band or language. But like I looked at the catalog, the junior high, Taunton junior high catalog, and there are like other electives also, like leadership and public speaking and many things like that. So what are the opportunities for those kind of, you know, like other than this band and language?
You mean in high school?
No, in junior high.
Even in junior high? Yeah, when we had leadership, but it was, we didn't have public speaking. So whatever you're interested in, I think junior high electives are not quite as important, because you can probably make up the foreign language credit in, I mean, if you want to take a foreign language, you're not do it in high school. But
with junior high electives, it's partly about feeling out what you want to do later in life, or building a skill. One of the biggest things I did with my junior high elective was learn to type. Sometimes the typewriter course is very essential. Learning, getting above 60 words per minute is essential in college, in writing, in any type of
And in your
college.
job stuff. Right now I just had to take, you know, a typing test. I mean, it's important. It's a huge, very important skill that we don't really teach.
And
Schools
this
don't really focus on it
is
anymore.
more and more unlikely that you don't have the ability to type, with computers being more and more prevalent. But I still am amazed at my father, as he is able to do this and get 50 words per minute.
That's important.
I have a question. Do you have any scholarships at high school level that they, you know, kids can apply at what level? Any scholarships available?
there's the fastweb.com. That's the one I went to. It's not much, but there have many opportunities for essays you can write, essay competitions. And since there's so many, you can always find something you are interested in. I mean, most of them are like maybe $500 to $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. Even at $50 also will be fine. I'm just curious as to what kind of exposure the kids could get at that level.
And even there, they even have large competitions, like where they get $25,000. But that's like you have to do a research project, perhaps. But if you have a great idea and you want to work with maybe someone in Stanford or Berkeley, someone in the area, some research professional or scientist or graduate student, you have a good idea, they give grants for that and they give big scholarships for that. Everything is on FastWeb. They have quite a few opportunities there. So everything from small essay competitions to large, scientific endeavors.
Also go through companies, like Coca-Cola Scholar is a hugely competitive scholarship that you can go through. Most major companies do have scholarships like that. And whatever, activity you get interested in, usually those extracurricular activities or the hospital you volunteer in offer scholarships too. And you're more likely to get those because you're going to be one of 5 or one of 6 of those volunteers that are there.
A lot of the larger organizations also will have their own scholarships. Also with FastWeb, you'll find that there are a lot of general scholarships. And you might say, well, that isn't really my field. That isn't quite what I do. Apply for it. Try it out. It might even be some of the scholarships are put your name in the hat and they'll draw you. And it's worth it, because if you are the person that's strong, $500 extra, that's nice.
Yeah, and parents go through your works too. So I know a lot of work. There's a lot of scholarships through companies and work. It's available to employees only.
Yes.
One last thing, try not to get into the, it's easy to compare yourself with other people. Those people are doing that and I definitely have to do that. Try not to do that. Just, tailor your high school career to your particular needs. Yeah, definitely everybody has to do well in school, and yeah, you're going to have to sometimes take classes that you're not quite comfortable with, you have to push yourself in that aspect, but with the extracurricular activities and with your outside work and summer opportunities, do what you like and do it well. I think that's the best advice. Don't say, oh, he's doing that, I have to do that too. Oh, he got into this college, I want to get into college, I have to do this too. It's really, you won't believe the diversity of students who come into many of these institutions. And what sets them apart is their dedication and their attitude toward work and attitude toward the subject that they're dealing with, and not the particular course that they took to get to college.
And that goes back to you're in high school, you're in junior high, you see the same people every day. Don't hold yourself to just that standard. Hold yourself to your own personal standard. Also go out and find other people to compare against, because having such a limited number of data points to work with is not very adequate at all. Quick note, logistics. I'm calling about 5 minutes left for Q&A. So questions, comments?
So they can ask up to 5 o'clock, but we're gonna wrap up at 4:30. Before that, I want you guys to talk about the financial part. How did you finance your tuition? And then application process. What did they ask? What did you write on your application?
So quickly about the finance. Many of these, many of the Ivy League colleges, and I'm sure Stanford as well, they're moving toward a need-based financial aid, which means you fill out this form called
FAFSA.
And
FAFSA and the CSS profile.
Okay.
So parents get familiar with those now, understand what they are going to need, because they're due senior year
about
February. And the quicker you get them in, the more aid you'll get.
I suggest
FAFSA.org.
I highly suggest.
Yeah.
Yes. I highly suggest downloading an application, looking through it, and try to fill it out. Another thing to keep in mind as you apply for college is, are you a citizen? It's something that I find there is still a certain constituency of people that don't find out that they were not born in the United States until they went and tried to apply for college.